Coming in. So is the housing bill too big and bloated to be effective?
Here to talk about it is our Fox panel, which includes, of course, Scott Martin from AstorLLC.com. We're bringing in Gary Kaltbaum from GaryK.com, Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof, and once again, Yoron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute. Peter, you just heard the Republican congressman saying our plan is better than the Democrats. Barney Frank saying our plan will work most. Which plan do you like?
Well, I don't like either of the plans. I mean, if you want to help home buyers, the best thing to do is let prices fall. Let real estate prices come down so housing is more affordable, so people don't have to borrow so much money to buy a home. What they're trying to do is artificially inflate home prices. If they're going to give people a tax credit, they're just going to force them to pay more money for their homes.
Gary Kaltbaum, we did have to remind our viewers this was the Republican. Republicans are usually the ones who have a reputation anyway of staying back and letting the market forces clear the inventory. In this case, it doesn't appear so.
Not these Republicans, my friend. Look, I'm going to agree with Peter. All this artificial help is only going to, stem the tide for the near term. If the market's going to want to go lower, it's going to go lower in spite of anything anybody does. I'm just amazed that when things were working well with market forces, hey, great, but when things didn't work well with market forces, let's socialize the losses and let government take care of everything. It is, for me, becoming insanity.
Yoron, one of the representative's proposals that he just talked about, a one-time tax credit for home buyers, and the credit would be of 10% of the home purchase price up to $10,000. Not a way to stimulate this situation?
Well, I just think politicians need to stop trying to stimulate us. I think all they do is you can
exactly
take that
what do you
mean?
mean?
Yes. I mean, I think they need to leave the market alone. I agree with Gary and with Peter. Let the market work this out. Prices come down, people will buy homes. What they're doing is creating enormous uncertainty now. A lot of buyers are going to wait now. They're going to sit on the sidelines and see how Congress plays this out. If the president vetoes it, doesn't veto it. If there are buyers in the market, you wouldn't want to buy now. You want to see if you're going to get subsidized by the government. Let's wait a few months and let Congress sort this out. It's nuts.
By the way, we should mention, Scott Martin, this is just crossing the wire right now. Consumer borrowing actually rose in March at the fastest pace in 4 months, more than double the increase of the previous month. Again, to the notion that, hey, the market has a way of clearing itself out.
Although it's all on credit cards. Strong borrowing on credit cards.
It is on credit cards, which I think you're going to see become of the stimulus checks, right, that people get.
Right.
It's debt service, right? I mean, what does this stimulus check do for one's mortgage? Pay half of it for a month? I mean, again, and prices, again, are going to keep falling. They're going to have to.
And if we're going to clear out the inventory, we have to make sure that the people in the houses can stay in the houses. If they can't afford it long term, maybe you give them a 2-month or 3-month or even a 1-year reprieve.
It could be the same person 6 months down the road. Exactly. It could be the same person 6 months down the road. Let's also think about, what about the input costs for these new homes? These builders are facing all kinds of crazy costs now for building new homes, which makes them even more difficult.
We don't need to build any homes.
And by the way, they still are. I mean, you see building permits. I mean, there still are a lot of problems with building new homes as far as costs.
Go ahead, Gary.
If you keep bailing out people that may be at bad behavior, you are inviting more bad behavior. If you're going to say, I'm going to let the mortgage principal come down, what's not to let everybody who's been paying stop paying because they can go to the banks, hey, lower my mortgage principal also.
And by
it just
the way,
makes absolutely no sense.
Buried deep in these proposals is this one. Improve regulation, Peter Schiff, of government enterprises like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan. Improve it. I mean, you got to scrap it.
Yeah, well, of course they're doing the opposite, though. They're leashing. They're lightening up on their leash. They're letting them be more reckless. So, the problem with a lot of this credit card borrowing, people are borrowing money now because they're deeply in debt. They can't pay it back. None of these people are going to be able to pay back this credit card debt. And then they're going to talk about a bailout for people who are overexposed on their credit cards.
Speaking of overspending, a cash infusion of millions to keep Hillary Clinton's campaign alive.
Hillary Clinton doubles up in her bid for the Democratic nomination. Money in politics next. At the pump, Rich Edson has the latest from inside the Beltway. Rich?
Hey, David and Liz. Well, as crude continues to spike and so do gas prices, we've had the president, the Speaker of the House, dueling proposals in the Senate. Everyone in Washington, D.C. is weighing on gas prices. Last week, Republicans in the Senate came out with their version, basically on the supply side, looking to drill a little bit more or drill at all in Anwar, drill a little bit more off the coastal, off more of the coast of our country, and of course, make it easier to build and issue permits for oil refineries. Today, Senator Mitch McConnell hit the Senate floor, hit the Democrats on their bill, talked up his own. Here's what he said.
In fact, the general thrust of their plan is to increase taxes on energy companies, which would raise, not lower, gas prices. But, Mr. President, Republicans do have a plan to reduce gas prices over the long term by increasing our supply of energy and American energy and American jobs right here in our own country.
The Democrats offered their competing bill today. One of the centerpieces of that, a windfall profits tax on oil companies if they do not invest in refineries or renewable energy, among other things. David and Liz, back to you.
Rich, thanks very much. So we've got some viewer email on this, don't we?
Yeah, well, because everybody's saying, wait a minute, the government could have done something. We pulled this one out just to give people a perspective. Bill in Golden, Colorado was kind enough to write Liz and Dave at foxbusiness.com, and he writes, hi. Our politicians have squandered 7 years of an opportunity to get us off imported oil, and as usual, nothing is getting done. If we had an average fuel economy of 50 miles per gallon versus the current stupid 23 million miles per gallon, we could not have to import one single barrel of oil. Needless to say, we should have been building nuclear power plants and plug-in and hybrid cars in a crash program in the U.S. We have the technology. Our domestic car companies have ceded innovation to Japan. Once again, wake up, America. He makes some good points.
He's mad as hell, and he's not going to take it anymore.
Yeah.
So how much will gas prices have to rise before Americans really start to change their behavior?
So we bring in the Fox panel. They're also mad as hell. Tackling this one, Scott Martin from AstorLLC.com, Gary Kaltbaum from GaryK.com, Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof, and Yoron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute. Gary K., take it away.
Look, they've already changed. They've already changed how they think and what they're doing. First off, look at the charts of the casino stocks, the cruise lines, the airlines. They're all doing very poorly. And there's been a little poll out where last year 56% of all Americans were saying they planned on a summer vacation. This year, 16%. So changes are being made. One more note: 1 out of every 5 cars now is now compact, and there's just a ton of SUVs on the lot. So people are changing based on what's been going on.
We had a guy who was supporting Vegas yesterday, and he was saying, oh, no, it's immune. And we kept saying, it's not immune.
Business is going down in Vegas. I'm getting offers every day. They're lowering hotel room rates, all kinds of deals left and right.
99 cents dinners.
People are going to theme parks. We saw that in Disney.
Yeah,
that's in Europe, though, not here.
Speaking of Europe, what about the nuclear option? Are we going to see, it is true, France has 70% nuclear power. That's how they generate eventually, if they go to electric cars, they won't need oil.
Exactly. They won't. But, David, again, I don't think we're going to get there, because I think actually we're going to see there's going to be some sort of government intervention in this, I think, eventually. But I think the problem is let's say oil prices or gas prices at the pump go to $5. There are a lot of people that still need to drive for their jobs. In the city of Chicago, I can take public transportation, right, if I don't want to buy a gallon of gas. There are a lot of people who just can't do it. It's part of the fabric of what they do, and they need to buy the gas. So that demand is going to be there, I think, no matter what.
Peter?
They're just going to cut back on other things. But, the emailer is right to blame the government, but he's blaming it for the wrong reasons. Instead of sending those camera crews to gas stations, you should send them to the Fed and start talking about Ben Bernanke. So when are you going to stop printing money? The reason that gas prices are rising, and the main reason, is that central banks around the world are printing money. That's the only reason these prices are going up. But what's going to happen ultimately to really hurt the American consumer is the foreign central banks that have pegged their currencies to the dollar, they're going to cut the nonsense out. They're going to let their currencies rise. And then oil prices are going to fall in China. The Chinese are going to use a lot more, but they're going to go through the roof in America.
But you can't dismiss supply and demand entirely. In fact, today was one of those days when the dollar was strong, gold was down, but oil was up. There is some momentum in and of itself because of the worldwide demand for oil to spike to maybe 200.
Sure, but that doesn't explain the current increase. It doesn't explain $125 oil. The reason is, Peter's absolutely right. This is a consequence of 5 years of bad inflationary Fed policies.
But wait a minute, today the dollar was stronger and oil was still up.
That's one day.
You can't evaluate these things on a day-to-day basis. They don't match up on a day-to-day basis. But the long-term trend is for the dollar to depreciate, for purchasing power of the dollar to depreciate, and for oil prices to go up. Oil is going up because of inflation primarily. Now, there are also supply and demand issues.